All right. Let's get into this Alan Watts thing.
Yeah.
You sent in his lecture, The Nature of Consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
We've also got these excerpts from an academic paper that analyzes his views,
Right.
like through a psychology lens.
Interesting.
So this is going to be a deep dive into like how we understand reality.
Okay.
And maybe even challenge some of the ways we've been thinking about it.
I like that. Yeah.
What I find so interesting about Watts is how he takes these complex ideas
Right.
about the universe and where we fit in, and he just makes them understandable.
Yeah.
With metaphors and storytelling and stuff.
It's like he's giving us a whole new language to think about these things.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah, so he starts by talking about these two models of the universe that he thinks kind of dominate Western culture.
Interesting.
The ceramic model and the fully automatic model.
I've heard of these.
Now, I'm curious, when you hear those terms, what comes to mind for you?
Well, ceramic model makes me think of like a potter,
Okay.
carefully molding clay. Watts uses that to represent the idea of God, like creating and controlling the universe. But the problem with that is it can make us feel insignificant.
Right.
Like we're just pawns in this grand design.
It's like we're always under the watchful eye of this cosmic authority figure or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's easy to see how that could lead to feeling guilty or unworthy.
Absolutely.
He even mentions like grand churches and rituals.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And those really reinforce this idea
Yeah.
of a powerful God that we need to submit to.
Definitely.
So then you've got the fully automatic model.
Okay.
And that kind of emerges in response to the ceramic model.
Makes sense.
You think about the scientific revolution, Darwin, the rise of reason.
Yeah.
Suddenly the universe isn't about divine will.
Right.
It's about these blind mechanical forces.
Okay.
We're like cogs in a giant machine.
Yeah, I can see that.
Which can feel kind of meaningless.
It's a little bleak.
Right. If everything's predetermined,
yeah,
what's even the point of it all?
Exactly.
It's like you get this existential dread when you realize just how vast and indifferent the universe is.
Totally. And the interesting thing is the academic paper actually points out that both of these models, while they're very different, they actually have a similar effect on us psychologically.
How so?
They both create a sense of separation between us and the universe.
So even though the fully automatic model rejects the idea of God, it still leaves us feeling isolated and powerless.
Exactly.
In a way.
Precisely. And that's where Watts' third model comes in.
Okay.
The dramatic model.
All right. So this is where things get really interesting. When you hear dramatic model, what pops into your head?
Well, I think of like a grand stage,
Okay.
lights action drama.
I like it.
Watts uses this metaphor to describe the universe as this kind of cosmic play.
Okay.
But here's the twist.
I'm listening.
The ultimate reality, what he calls the central self, is both the actor and the audience.
Wait, so hold on.
Yeah.
So it's not just that we're in the play.
Right.
We're part of the force that's creating the play.
That's the idea.
Whoa.
It's like we're all characters wearing masks.
Okay.
And Watts even points out that the word person comes from the Greek word for mask, persona.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So we're all playing these different roles.
Right.
But ultimately, we're all expressions of this one central self, experiencing itself.
My mind is officially blown.
It's a big idea.
Yeah. So this central self is really interesting to me. And I know it ties into a lot of Eastern philosophy.
It does.
Can you break that down a little bit?
Sure. So think of the ocean.
Okay.
Each wave is distinct, right?
Yeah.
But they're all ultimately expressions of the same water.
Right.
In the same way, our individual selves are like waves, unique and temporary, but part of this larger interconnected ocean of being.
Okay, so are we talking about God here?
Well,
is central self just another word for God?
Watts kind of leaves that open to interpretation.
Interesting.
You could definitely see it as a way of understanding the divine, but it's also a concept that speaks to the interconnectedness of all things, regardless of your religious beliefs.
I like how that challenges those typical Western ideas about individuality.
Yeah.
It's like we're so focused on being separate and unique that we forget we're a part of something so much larger.
Exactly. And that has huge implications for how we see our place in the universe, our purpose, even our relationships with each other.
Yeah, because if we're all part of the same central self, then harming someone else is ultimately like harming ourselves.
It's a powerful thought.
It is. And I'm already starting to see how this model
Yeah.
could be a really empowering way of looking at life.
Absolutely. It challenges us to rethink some pretty big things.
Like what?
Well, like birth and death.
Yeah, I mean, most of us are terrified of death.
Of course.
We see it as the final curtain at the end of the show.
Right.
But Watts has a really interesting perspective on that.
I'm curious.
He says, try to imagine going to sleep and never waking up.
Okay.
You can't really experience non-existence.
Right. You can't.
It's not something we can grasp with our minds.
Exactly. And from the perspective of the dramatic model, death isn't really an ending. It's more like a change of costume, a transition into a new role.
So if we can let go of that fear of death, what does that free us up to do?
That's a great question, and that's something we'll explore more as we go.
Okay.
Because this is just the beginning.
This is giving me a lot to think about already.
There's a lot to unpack.
We're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to come.
Definitely.
So stay tuned for part 2.
Looking forward to it.
Where we'll dive into how Watts connects all this to the nature of consciousness itself.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. So we're back and ready to really get into how this whole dramatic model thing connects to consciousness.
Right.
This is where I start to feel like I'm in over my head a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a tough concept.
It's a big one.
I think a lot of people get tripped up by it.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Consciousness is one of those ultimate mysteries. I mean, philosophers have been debating this for centuries.
Totally.
And even with all the science we have now, we're still just scratching the surface.
For sure.
But what I like about Watts is he tries to kind of bridge the gap between Eastern philosophy and Western thought. And he gives us this new way of thinking about what consciousness is and how it works.
So in part 1, we talk about the universe as this play.
Right.
Where does consciousness fit into that analogy?
Well, imagine the universe, this grand cosmic play, is happening on a stage. Consciousness is the light that illuminates the stage, you know, allowing everything to be seen and experienced.
Ah, I get it. So without consciousness, there's no play at all.
Exactly.
Just potential.
Just potential.
But Watts takes it further.
He does.
And says, consciousness isn't something we have.
Right.
It's what we are.
Exactly.
It's not a thing.
No.
It's the ground of existence itself.
Yeah, the very foundation of everything.
Okay, so help me wrap my head around this.
Yeah.
If consciousness is the ground of existence, and we're all expressions of this central self,
right,
does that mean we're all just little pieces of God running around?
That's a great question. And Watts would he'd probably chuckle at the way we try to put it into those terms.
Yeah.
It's not about dividing up consciousness like slices of a pie or something.
Okay.
It's more like we're each a unique expression of that same underlying reality, that same universal consciousness.
I see.
Think of it like a whirlpool.
A whirlpool.
So you've got water flowing in a river, right?
Right, yeah.
The water itself is constant. But when it swirls around in a particular way, you get this whirlpool. The whirlpool has a distinct form. Yeah. But the water that's flowing through it is always changing.
So we're like the whirlpools.
Exactly.
Individual and unique, but also part of that larger flow.
Yes. And Watts really emphasizes that this flow isn't limited to our bodies. It extends outward, connecting us to everything around us.
Which brings us back to that interconnectedness.
It does.
So it's not just that we're all connected, but we're actively participating in this unfolding of the universe through our own individual expressions of consciousness.
You got it. And this leads to a pretty radical idea.
Okay, what's that?
The separation that we feel between ourselves and the world. You know, that feeling of me versus everything else.
It's an illusion.
It's an illusion.
So all the boundaries and categories, all the labels we put on things.
All of it. They're not real.
Watts would say they're constructs.
Okay.
Useful in some ways.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they limit our understanding of who we really are.
And the paper points out how much that goes against everything we're taught in Western culture.
It's all about the individual right.
Yeah.
Self-reliance, competition.
Standing out.
Standing out from the crowd. It's drilled into us.
But Watts is saying that view isn't just inaccurate.
Right.
It's the source of a lot of our suffering.
Exactly, because it disconnects us from the whole...
From that central self.
From that central self, exactly.
When we start to see through that illusion of separation, it can really change how we live our lives.
It changes everything.
Yeah, how we relate to others.
Absolutely.
Even how we view death.
Yeah, the whole death thing.
It's a big one.
It's huge.
Watts says we're afraid of death because we think it's this experience of nothingness forever.
But as we talked about before, you can't actually experience non-existence.
You can't. It's just a concept, not an experience.
And from this dramatic model perspective,
yeah,
death isn't an ending.
Right.
It's more like emerging back into
that universal flow.
That universal flow of consciousness.
Okay, but here's where I get stuck.
Okay.
If we're all just expressions of this central self, do we lose our individuality?
That's a common worry.
Yeah.
And Watts actually talks about that directly.
Okay, good.
It's not about erasing your individuality.
All right.
It's more like each of us is a unique instrument in this vast cosmic orchestra.
Oh, I like that.
So we all have our own part to play, our own sound to contribute. And that creates the richness and complexity of the symphony.
That's beautiful.
And Watts takes the symphony idea a step further and introduces this concept of play as a fundamental force in the universe.
It's like God playing hide and seek with itself. Exactly like the universe is this grand game, and we're all a part of it.
Experiencing all the ups and downs.
Experiencing it all.
The joys, the sorrows.
The whole shebang.
The wins and the losses that come with playing.
And remember, for Watts, this play isn't frivolous.
Okay.
It's serious business.
Right.
It's through this playful exploration, this dance of consciousness that the universe evolves.
And we're not just along for the ride.
No, we're co-creators.
Okay, this is starting to click for me.
Good.
But I'm not going to lie, it's a lot to take in.
It is.
It's liberating, but it's also kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
To think about the vastness of it all.
It can be overwhelming.
Yeah, to shift your perspective so much.
For sure.
And Watts even talks about the danger of what he calls inflation.
Oh, yeah.
Where people misinterpret this idea of interconnectedness.
Right.
And they get this inflated ego.
And they think they have control over others.
So it's not about becoming some all-powerful deity.
No, not at all.
It's about understanding our place
Yeah.
and the responsibility that comes with it.
And that's where the academic paper offers some interesting insights.
What's that?
It really emphasizes the importance of self-awareness.
Okay.
Understanding our biases and limitations as we explore these ideas.
So it's not just intellectual.
No.
It's about embodying these ideas.
Yes. Living it.
In our lived experience.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
So it's a process.
It's an ongoing process.
It's waking up to our true nature.
Waking up.
As Watts calls it.
And sometimes we need a little help along the way.
Right. So that's where the idea of a guru comes in.
Exactly.
Or a teacher.
Yeah. In Eastern traditions, the guru isn't there to give you knowledge.
Right.
They help you uncover the knowledge that's already inside you.
It's like a mirror.
Yes, a mirror reflecting back your true nature.
Helping us to see past the illusions that are holding us back.
And the paper makes a good point.
Yep.
That the role of the guru can take many forms. It doesn't have to be some wise old man on a mountain. It could be a book, a piece of art.
Nature.
Nature. Anything that wakes you up.
Yeah.
And makes you see the world with fresh eyes.
So in a way, this deep dive we're doing, exploring Watts' ideas and these psychological perspectives, it could be a kind of guru itself.
Absolutely. We're all on this journey together, supporting each other as we try to grasp these mind-bending concepts.
And remember, it's not about passively listening.
Right.
It's about engaging with these ideas.
Yes.
Questioning them.
Absolutely.
Playing with them.
Seeing how they resonate with your own life.
Exactly. Who knows? Maybe this deep dive will be a moment of awakening for someone.
That would be amazing.
You know, help us see the world and ourselves in a whole new light.
And that brings us to a really key question.
Okay.
What does it actually mean to live by this dramatic model?
Yeah.
How do we take these big abstract ideas and put them into action in our everyday lives?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
It's easy to get caught up in the ideas. But how do we actually live this dramatic model? How do we make it real?
Well, I think Watts would say it's less about changing what you do and more about changing how you think about what you're already doing. Remember, life is the game.
So instead of trying to win the game, it's more about how we play it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think about it. When you're really into a game you love, you're not focused on the outcome.
Right.
You're just enjoying playing it. The challenge, the strategy, the fun of it.
Yeah.
That's the point.
So Watts is saying we should approach life with that same playfulness, that curiosity, let go of trying to control everything.
Right.
And just be present.
Be in the moment.
Okay, I can see that.
It's about surrendering to the dance of life.
Okay.
Seeing where it takes you.
Yeah.
Trusting that there's wisdom in how it all unfolds.
But isn't there a danger in that?
What do you mean?
Like, doesn't that just lead to being passive?
Oh, I see.
Just letting things happen.
That's a good point.
Without taking action.
And Watts wouldn't say just sit back and let life happen to you.
Okay.
It's more about finding the balance
between
effort and ease, intention and surrender.
Okay.
He talks about it in terms of wu-wei.
Right. We touched on that earlier.
We did.
But maybe we need to explain it a little more.
Yeah.
For people who aren't familiar with, like, Taoist philosophy,
right.
What does wu-wei even mean?
Well, it's often translated as non-action or effortless action.
It's a little paradoxical.
It is. It's kind of a mind bender. But think about it this way.
Okay.
Have you ever tried to force something to happen?
Yeah.
And it just completely backfired?
All the time.
Like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole?
Totally. You just end up frustrated.
Exactly.
And probably break something.
Wu-wei is about realizing there's a natural flow to the universe.
Okay.
And you need to align yourself with that flow.
Instead of fighting against it.
Exactly.
So instead of swimming upstream, you learn to ride the current.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
It's about knowing when to act.
Yeah.
And knowing when to let go.
Mm.
Trusting that something bigger is at work.
Guiding us.
Guiding us toward what's best for us.
It's like when you're surfing.
Oh, yeah.
And you find that sweet spot where you're just in sync with the wave.
Yeah.
You're not fighting it. You're flowing with it.
Perfect analogy.
And we can apply this wu-wei to anything.
Absolutely.
Relationships work.
Everything.
In relationships, it's about letting go of that need to control.
Yeah.
Letting people be themselves.
Give them space.
At work, it's about finding that balance between striving for excellence, but not being attached to the outcome.
Exactly.
It's just enjoying the process.
The creativity, the challenge, that's where the joy is.
And even when things are tough, wu-wei reminds us to be open, accepting rather than resisting or being afraid.
To trust that even in the chaos, there's an underlying order.
Okay, this makes sense, but how do we actually do this?
Right.
How do we cultivate that wu-wei?
Okay, well,
that trust in the flow.
The academic paper talks about the importance of awareness.
Okay.
Paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your body, noticing how they affect your actions, becoming the observer.
So taking a step back.
Yes.
And watching yourself.
Like you're watching a play.
But without judgment.
Exactly. Just observe with curiosity and compassion.
And as you do that, you start to see the patterns.
You do.
The habits that keep you stuck.
In those old ways of thinking.
Yeah, the ceramic model. The fully automatic model.
Yeah. You see how your fears, your insecurities, your need to control.
They're creating suffering.
They are.
Disconnecting you from the joy.
And from that place of awareness, you can make different choices. Break free. Break free from the limitations.
Step out of the roles we've been playing.
And embrace who you really are.
Become a conscious creator.
Yes.
Instead of an unconscious actor.
And when you do that, you start to see the world differently.
Oh, so?
The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The mundane becomes magical. You experience this interconnectedness. The spontaneity.
The joy.
The joy that was always there.
But we were too in our heads to see it.
Exactly. It's like waking up from a dream.
Coming out of the shadows and into the light.
And this process of waking up, of embodying the dramatic model, it's a journey.
It's not always easy.
It's not. There will be challenges.
Doubts, fears, resistance.
But Watts reminds us that's all part of the game.
It's in those tough moments that we grow.
We do.
We learn.
Yeah.
We become more ourselves.
And the paper also talks about the importance of support. Finding people who can help you on the journey.
So maybe explore things like meditation, mindfulness.
Connect with like-minded people.
Find your community.
It's not about going it alone.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Alan Watts and his dramatic model.
What a journey.
What do you hope people take away from this?
I hope they walk away feeling like there's a different way to see things, a different way to be in the world, that life can be an adventure.
An exploration.
A dance.
Yeah.
And that we all have the power to choose how we play the game.
That's beautiful. And I think what I'm taking away is that it's not about getting it right.
No.
Or reaching some kind of enlightenment.
It's not about that.
It's about the journey.
The journey itself.
Showing up every day, ready to learn, to grow, to play.
And remember, the game never ends.
There's always something new to discover.
Always.
Within ourselves.
In the world.
So to everyone listening, go out and explore.
Experiment.
See what you find.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.